Hello everyone, it's Julie. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that I never thought I would be talking about on this channel, and that is fan fiction. Before I get into it, I need to give you a little bit of background. So I am the author of a webcomic called So You Write, and it's mostly sort of an exaggerated autobiographical comic about the writing life. I actually do another comic too, but that's a story comic and not really relevant to this conversation. I started this comic in 2012, and mostly I just make little 4-panel strips about things that are familiar to a lot of writers, or offer perspective, or sometimes even advice or ranting or whatever. And the comic that I'm going to cover on the next issue is going to be about my attitude toward fan fiction. Here's the drawings I've done for it without any of the backgrounds or the talk bubbles, but it's partially done. And this one's going to be about how back when I was first getting started trying to be like a serious author, I kind of looked down on fan fiction. I wasn't a consumer of it. I didn't know anyone personally who was an author of it. But I kind of just looked down on the concept, mostly because it was, quote, not original. And of course, it not being original was kind of the point, but I guess my perspective was that I didn't understand why people would spend a bunch of time and effort to cast characters that were not theirs in scenarios that were not covered by the canon material, or that they wanted to act out their fantasies or insert their own characters or self-insert characters to interact with characters they liked, or if they were too lazy to develop a world or something like that. I had kind of all these prejudicial attitudes toward people who write fan fiction, mostly just because I guess in those days I was just getting started in college. I was an older teenager, and I had a very narrow view of what I thought writing was for, and I was very hung up on originality. And even though today I am not a consumer of fan fiction, and I still don't write fan fiction, and really have no interest in that sort of thing, I have a different perspective, a completely almost opposite perspective on fan fiction now, partly because I have come into contact with people who do write it, and I understand what it does for them, and I also understand that writing can be for a variety of purposes, that it doesn't always have to be about originality or executing your own idea or creating your own characters and selling it to a publisher or putting it out there. So I just want to go over a few benefits of fan fiction, that if you feel anything like the way I used to when I was an older teenager and kind of looking down my nose at people who wrote fan fiction. And I should just say as an aside that I wasn't rude to them or anything. I didn't follow people around on the internet and comment on their efforts and tell them that they were wasting their time or anything. It was just kind of a privately held belief that I now am a little bit ashamed of, that I had that attitude toward people who engaged in this ultimately harmless and possibly constructive activity. So I was not a public hater or anything like that, but if you feel anything like the way that I did in those days, you may have some disrespect, or at least have no understanding of why people would do this. And if somebody is a fan fiction author and you hear that and you have kind of a negative reaction to it, some of the things that I'm about to say may help you see it a little bit differently. Number one, of course, fan fiction can be a way of engaging with material that you love, and even if you're not interested in being a real author, so to speak, like a professional author or somebody who wants to write original material. It's a hobby. It's fun to do. It is not illegal to do it as long as you're not trying to make money off of somebody else's property, or you're not representing your work as the work of the creators, or the people who write it professionally, or whose characters they are. It's really fun sometimes, especially if the fan fiction that you're writing is from a very limited source material, where there was only one book or one movie or something like that, and you loved what was done enough that you want to visit that world or spend more time with those characters again, and that you don't have an opportunity to do that if the book series is over, or if they're not making any more of that comic, or there was only just the 1-2 hour movie. This is a way for people to show their love and to engage with other fans of the material, to celebrate it more, and to enjoy this fictional creation that, those of us who write fiction, we can only dream that people would love our stuff enough that they would visit it on their own time again and again, and do something other than just re-experience it how we wrote it. And as an author, you may not want to read fan fiction based on your work. It is a little weird. I have limited experience with that myself, but it's not necessary for you to look at what people do. It's still really flattering to know that somebody has liked what you've done enough that they want to create scenarios with some of the source material that you've created. And of course, it can be a nice way for those people to engage with other fans of the material. Number 2, I would say another obvious one, is that people are developing writing skills when they do this. When they stretch out their wings on a project where they're not pressured to come up with their own characters or their own scenarios or their own world. They're actually practicing the craft itself. They may be getting better with discipline. They may be getting better with characterization. They may be getting better with spelling and grammar. They may be just getting better at writing sentences and telling a story. And this can be especially likely to benefit them if they become popular on a fan fiction site and people are telling them that they want to see more. They'll keep practicing and they'll keep writing more and they'll keep getting better. This is kind of a less intimidating place to try your skills. Let's face it, writing is very difficult when it has all these pieces and parts that you have to be good at all at the same time by the time you finish. You have to have all of these things at least somewhat mastered to have a chance at getting your book bought by a publisher. So it can be so intimidating, especially when you see so much writing advice out there saying you have to do it this way, or don't ever do that, or I hate it when authors do this. And you've got to think about your characters and your plot and your backstory and whether you have the mechanics of writing down right. And sometimes it can be very, very off-putting for a beginner or someone who may have been criticized in the past, to find the confidence to write anything else. So these sorts of things provide an opportunity for someone to have some of those building blocks already made for them by some other author, some other creator, where they can practice stacking them up. They can practice making stuff with them, and they can get a feel for it so that they can apply what they learn in their future projects if they do decide to have them. Number 3 ties into what I just said, and I think that this is actually just an extension of what I have said about practicing, is that it does build confidence. It does build, that practice will make authors feel like it isn't as hard as you thought, or it wasn't as intimidating. Perhaps it is more fun than you think, and you may through the process of flexing your muscles and trying out new things, when it's not your characters, when it's not your world or your idea, or to some extent it may be if you're inserting original characters or coming up with non-canon plots, you can start to feel like maybe this is something you can do, when otherwise there are a lot of people who spend years feeling like they have to practice or they have to get better somehow before they're allowed to write a book. And I have unfortunately heard this from a lot of writers where they say, I don't want to start my novel project until I'm a better writer. How do you think you're going to become a better writer if you don't write? There's not a reason to avoid writing until you can write. It doesn't make sense. And sometimes people roll their eyes and say, like, practice is overrated, or I need to study. I need to study the greats, or I need to read more, or whatever. But just doing it teaches you so much that you don't even know yet if you haven't been doing it. And sometimes, like in the previous number 2 that I'm talking about, the mechanics can become part of your repertoire if you practice, and you can develop confidence through that. Sometimes if you are using someone else's story, it's just not as intimidating, and you're never going to feel that pressure that you're going to have to create this so that it's publishable. It'll never be something that'll be all yours. So it's kind of like the pressure's off, and you can develop confidence in your writing skills, and maybe just get some writing muscles going so that you feel like, hey, this is actually something that maybe I could do more of the original parts and not have to borrow from stuff that I love. Hopefully you can make a smooth transition to original material if that's where you choose to go. And like I said, some people don't ever want to do that. Some people are just in it because they want to enjoy those fandoms or those characters, and there's no obligation to move from that into original projects. But you may find that you want to, and you never thought you would, but hopefully you're not going to borrow too heavily from your source material, from your fan works. Hopefully you're not going to just take design ideas or backgrounds of characters and just basically reinvent them as yours with very little changes. Try to avoid doing that if you have a lot of practice in fan stuff but not a lot in original. It's going to be tempting, I would guess, based on what I've heard. But I think there's nothing wrong with taking elements from things that you admire and incorporating them into your work, as long as it's not an explicit concept or an explicit character that you're reinventing as yours with almost no changes. So that's really all I can say about fan works. But I will say as a closer that I have heard of an awful lot of authors that are up and coming and being hugely celebrated in the world right now, who got their start in fan fiction and are unapologetically making references to when they used to write fan works. And being a fan artist and being a fan fiction writer is not a shameful thing. It's not something that you have to hide your dirty past or something. I mean, even if you write porn, that's okay. If you wrote erotic stories in your fan fiction, like, maybe it might be a little bit sensitive for you to be like, oh, I really hope that nobody finds my old porn. But at the same time, everybody has a learning experience. Everybody has these training grounds that, if you're like me, your training novels are probably 7 or 8 manuscripts that will never see the light of day, but for some people it's fan fiction. And there's nothing wrong with that, even if it's very bad, even if it's very silly, even if it has a terrible self-insert character. I mean, most of us are guilty of that in our original works too. So if you should be so inclined to write fan fiction, but you're being told by anyone that it's not respectable or that you are wasting your time or something, don't listen to that, because I believe that it's a legit form of artistic expression and that it has very constructive elements to it that can benefit somebody who wants to become a professional author later in their life. And you can do both also. You don't have to stop writing fan fiction if you're writing original material that is successful. It's not something that is always just a stepping stone. It's a fun thing, it's a hobby, and it has plenty of merits. So that's where I will end this one, and thank you so much for watching.